Here they start rolling in. Okay. So welcome. I see Dee and Melody's joining or getting ready to here, and Candace. Thanks for joining us. We are right at 6 o'clock, so we may have a few others trickle in and get started. Whoops, go ahead. Well, I'm not sure if I missed something there. Well, we're getting started for the third class of homebuyer education. And Dee, I see that you are listed as Dee, but I'm not sure who to check in on my my sign up.
DeAndre.
Okay, I'm going to just switch your name for my purposes this evening, if that's all right.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. That'll just help me for making sure I'm keeping track of people. Awesome. Okay. So as usual, you can have your cameras off if you like. If you need to tend to kids or eat dinner or do whatever you need to while you're at home, feel free to do that. And also feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions at any point. I'd rather you ask while you're thinking about it rather than waiting till the end. So feel free to jump in if you have questions. Tonight, we are going to talk about shopping for the home, and we've got some really awesome guests here, Ryan King and Tim Thomas from Real Estate 2. We're going to cover the first part of class, and then we should have someone from the health department joining us at 7. They're going to just do a real brief presentation about lead in the home, and then James Clay, who most of you saw last week, is going to talk about keeping the maintenance up on the new home so that you're protecting your investment for the last part of class. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan and Tim here, and I will start screen sharing your PowerPoint. Give me just a moment, make sure you can see this. All right, can everybody see that PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I'm just going to go from the beginning. So they're going to be covering shopping for a home. And these are the two fellas that we have with us. You guys take it away.
Thanks for having us, Rachel. And like she said, if at any time you guys have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate. I'm more than happy to have some discussion with you on that. So like she said, I'm Ryan. I've been doing real estate for a little over 7 years. One of the owners here at Real Estate 2. And Tim here, let him introduce himself.
I'm Tim Thomas. I'm an agent here at Real Estate 2. Happy to be here. I'm in my going on my 4th year in real estate. Excited to do this class because as being my young age, a lot of my business is first-time home buyers. So I do this a lot, and so I'm very excited to talk about it and share with you all. So today we're going to be talking about a few things. A couple topics that we're going to cover is, picking a neighborhood that's right for you and your family, whether it be convenience, is it close to, shopping, food, et cetera, different types of homes and home ownership. There's not all homes are the same always. Locating the right house to meet your wants and needs, because we might want a whole lot of things in our home, especially our first home, but may not always get them. And then we'll be going over how to put together an offer. It's very important. There's a lot more factors other than just the price of your offer. There's a lot of other things to consider. Negotiating said offers, what happened from contract to closing, things that you can do, choosing the right neighborhood, selecting your home, all of that. So
So like Tim said, in finding the right neighborhood for you, there's several different things that you might want to consider. If you have children or you're wanting to have children, school district can be important to you. Proximity to your job, your needs in transportation, and other activities, as far as shopping, if you attend church, if it's close to your church, all of those things are important when you're picking your house. You want to, kind of explore the neighborhood as a whole before you make that decision. And those are some links to some good things to help you do that. Walkscore.com, it rates neighborhoods as far as walkability and proximity to amenities that you might need. And the CDC also has access to affordable and nutritious food, showing you where you might be able to travel to get to those sorts of things. And the county health also has rankings as well.
Understanding a couple of different types of homes. I'm sure one that we're all familiar with is a single family residence. That's just your typical standalone house. It's just it's a lot we see out here in the Midwest. As you get into more dense cities, more densely populated areas, you'll see a lot more duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, which are just they're multifamily homes. They are one building typically, broken up into different, whether 2, 3, 4 or more livable units. And those are ones that you can purchase those as well. We've got townhouses or row houses. Those are kind of similar, as into they are their own unit. They do share a structure and things like that. Same with condos, condominiums, co-ops. They typically will have an association that helps take care of maintenance. And since you're all sharing a building, you're going to have to have a collective insurance on the property, taking care of everything, all of the owners working together to ensure that the property is maintained and taken care of. Manufactured modular homes, those are big too, especially with people having difficulty with inventory and trying to find houses. So some people will purchase some land, as you see the last one's land lease, and then be able to buy a modular home or a manufactured home. So tons of different homes to pick from.
These are just different ways that you can own your home. Sole and separate would be if you own your property outright by yourself. There's tenancy in common, where Tim and I could own the same property. Joint tenancy, we would also still own the same property, but it's more specific in how we own the property. So if it's joint tenancy, if something would happen to Tim, his rights of survivorship would transfer over to me as the other owner. Where tenancy in common, Tim could have heirs to his estate where they would transfer down to him. So we still own the property together, but it can be in different capacities. And shared equity is something that you could do with your lender, where not only do they give you the loan, but they're also an investor to give you funds up front to be able to purchase that property.
Choosing some features on your house. There's a lot of features. How big's your family? You need enough space. You need enough bedrooms for yourself, your kids, any family members that might be staying with you, older parents, anything like that. A lot of different things to take into account. Are the rooms big enough to house more than one child, or not? Maybe my kids don't get along very well and they need their own rooms. Things to consider. Your living needs and interests are also very important. Again, he talked about proximity to work, picking your neighborhoods earlier, schools and shopping, And then in today's day and age, a lot of people are conscious about how green or energy efficient that their homes are. And those can be, I mean, obviously everyone is learning and seeing people installing solar panels, but there's also many other ways to make your house green that's not just solar panels. There's things you can do with your heating, whether it be geothermal heating, making sure your windows are all sealed. I mean, a lot of little things to make sure that your house is insulated well, the cold air staying in, hot air staying in when it needs to be hot, cold air staying in when it needs to be cold.
I think some other things that we talk about on our end of things a lot, when I meet with a first time buyer, a lot of times I'll have them come into the office and sit down and just kind of talk to me about some things that they're interested in a home. And from our perspective, a lot of times we'll hear how many bedrooms and that sort of thing. But we also talk about square footage a lot in our industry as far as how big the actual whole property is. Fenced in yard, garage size. A lot of times those are some basement, no basement. Those are some big ticket items that I think come up a lot. Central air, what type of heating is it? So those are all kind of things to consider when you're thinking about making your first purchase. Yeah. Anything else on that?
No, that was good. Thank you.
It's great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and as I said, working with first-time buyers, you can work with a broker, real estate agent, a licensed realtor. I always encourage you to work with a professional when you're doing this. It doesn't cost a buyer anything to work or have representation. We get paid a commission, but that's from the seller side of things. So I strongly encourage you guys to try to work with a professional whenever you can. We do this day in and day out. We're really just here to advocate for you. So trying to find a good fit for you with the right agent that's going to work for your best needs is important in the transaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like it's great to have that professional contact for you to be your go-to person when you're in this process of purchasing a home. I mean, sometimes it can feel like trying to drink from a fire hose. All this information being blasted at you, offers this, inspections that, boom, 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 and so it is really good to have someone not just explain, but show you the ropes and guide you. Hey, this is okay. This is the process. This is laying it out. Expect these types of things. It just makes the whole process much more seamless. So who do agents like us work for? So there's different types of agents: listing agents, buyer's agents, dual agents. Listing agents are those who sell houses. So again, like he said, we get paid on the commission of a sale of a home, which gets paid on the listing side. So buyers, or some people that are represented by buyer's agents, they represent the buyer. They're putting the offers in, and then so that buyer doesn't have to hire their agent, as long as they have a good communication, a good relationship, and they trust each other. It's going to work out very well. Dual agents, you'll see a lot of times. I mean, it happens quite often. It's just really there's one agent that's representing both sides. Some brokerages like that, some don't. There's issues with what's the word I'm looking for? How can you represent your client the best if you're representing both sides like that? But if you're going at every transaction with integrity and honesty, and all parties are aware what's going on, it's still best to work with an agent like us.
Yeah. So like Tim kind of talked about each agent, this is going to kind of break down what a buyer's agent can do for you. As I said, I like to have a sit down meeting kind of before we go look at any houses. I like to sit down, kind of talk about what you're looking for, what your goals are, how soon you're wanting to do this process, what hurdles we have to go get through. Have you talked to anyone about being pre-qualified yet? Who do you bank with? Those sorts of things. And then we talk about what you're looking for in a home. Once you've talked to a bank and we kind of have a range of what you're pre-qualified for, then we can kind of start our search. The other thing that I like to do up front before we look at anything is review a blank purchase contract, because at the end of the day, that's kind of the heart of everything that we're going to do. And I like to do it up front with no pressure of finding that home. I don't expect you to remember everything, but it's just a good kind of crash course of everything that's going to go into getting you in that home that you want. So I like to do it up front, just so you're kind of aware of all the terms and discussions and decisions that we're going to have to make throughout the transaction. And then once we have your pre-approval letter, we set people up on what's called a flash here in our office. And what it is I compile all the criteria that you're looking for. And then it sends you automatic emails anytime that a listing in your criteria comes new to the market. It emails you instantly. So a lot of times my clients see them before I even see them, and then they can call me and we'll set up a time to go look at those properties.
Another important thing to touch on real quick, it's fine, you could, is that buyer agents, listing agents, a lot of times are, one agent can be both with different clients. You do have people that are specifically buyers agents and people that are specifically listing agents. And then a lot of people like Brian and myself that do a lot of business in both.
Yep.
And look, extended on what we were talking about, the buyer's agent, what they do, they're going to do the research on, obviously, like when he says we're going to set you up on a flash, that's going to give us the information that we need to know what's going on in the market. So if we know that we know that you want to look at neighborhoods over here, or you want to put an offer on this house, we need to be confident that what we're coming in at is what the house is valued at. You don't want to have to come up, and especially in a busy market where people are either bidding over or bidding under, or a lot of different terms. You need to make sure that you're negotiating the best terms for yourself, but also what you might need, there's things that you can kind of give and take on, and then things that you really can't. And your buyer's agent, or really real estate agents, is going to guide you on who you need to be referred to, helping you get your pre-qualification letter. We have a lot of relationship with lenders and banks because it can kind of be intimidating sometimes. A lot of people think the very first step in buying a home is searching for the home and going looking at them. And it's really nice to have help and assistance through the entire process of whether it be starting from start to finish, getting the loan, getting pre-approved, getting the information we need.
And there's so many different lenders to work with, and there's different programs that work for different buyers. So just because it didn't work out at maybe the bank that you do your personal banking with, that doesn't mean that there's not a product out there that can help you qualify to get you in the home that works for you. So knowing us having relationships with several different lenders helps. But like Tim said, I think it's really critical to get you in touch with a lender and have a realistic expectation of what you can afford before you look at houses, because I've been in that situation where I've known someone like, I just really want to see this house first. And they go and they look at that house and it's way out of their price range. And then every house that you show them, they keep comparing it back to that other house that they can't afford. And that's a frustrating thing for them, because that house is just out of their budget at that time, and nothing in their budget is going to quite compare to that property. So it's really critical to do things in a set chronological order.
How do you find an agent? Well, I'm right here. I'm just kidding. So there's tons of things you can do. You can just ask around. You're going to want to go with somebody that you know, somebody that you trust, somebody that is going to work on your behalf and work in your best interests. That's what we do. We're held to a fiduciary standard. So, ask your friends and relatives, hey, have you bought a house recently? Who'd you work with? How'd you like them? How'd they do? What didn't you like about them? You can research local companies in the area. You can call your local board of realtors. Springfield has their own board. You can call them, and they'll be gladly to give you any kind of information, and give you realtors and real estate companies to research yourself, because at the end of the day, it's your decision. It's important that you interview a couple agents, and it's okay. You get an agent that you think you're gonna like and do well with, and then, they may not answer your texts or calls back as fast as you might like, and it's okay to fire that agent and find someone that's gonna work for you. And so,
Kind of just like the lending piece. Just
Exactly.
because you've talked to one mortgage lender doesn't mean that you're stuck with that person. And it's the same thing with an agent. Like Tim said, it's a relationship. So there needs to be trust on both ends, and it needs to be a good fit for you. It's pretty much the biggest financial decision you're ever going to make. So you want to make sure that you feel that your needs are being best represented, I guess. So.
Mhm.
I just want to add something. So the realtor is often, they do so many things and they're really good at giving guidance. And a lot of times they do us some education too. So if you have questions, it's a really great person to go to and ask your questions. And then also, if you're not feeling like you're getting everything you need or are well supported, then it's a good idea, as they said, to shop around and talk with different realtors to make sure that you are getting everything that you're looking for. So they do a lot of things other than just show you houses, of course, as they said. So they are kind of a big player.
And even after the transaction's over, I always encourage my clients to reach back out. We have a lot of connections with different folks that may repair something that you might need, or you might want to make a remodel or something to your home. I mean, we do this every day. So as Rachel said, we do have a lot of connections. So we're happy to share any of that knowledge, as often as we can with you.
Mhm.
So this is just talking about kind of exploring the market on your own, which I encourage people to do always, even if you've always lived in this town. Um, you know, just doing some research up front on the internet is important. I think driving the neighborhood is one of the best things that you can do. Um, I've had people that didn't think they wanted to live in a certain area, and then they went there and this has everything I like. Um, so I encourage you guys to do that. Get out there and kind of explore it. Go to open houses. That's a great thing to do. They're starting to come back as the pandemics died down there for a while. We didn't have them, and with not a whole lot of houses being for sale, they sell so quick that we still don't have a whole lot of open houses, but they're a great source of information. And just going through a home in that neighborhood, it gives you kind of a feel of the layout, and kind of what's there. The other thing, if you do find an area that you like, I think talking to neighbors is a huge thing.
Mhm.
If it's a house you're on the fence about, if you see somebody out, talk to them. Or I get clients a lot that will stop in a neighborhood that they really want to find something in, and they talk to a neighbor and they say, well, yeah, I know that so and so down here is getting ready to sell their house, or uh, you know somebody unfortunately passed away and they're going to be selling their house. So I think, yeah, getting out there and exploring and kind of doing some of your own research. Not that we're not happy to do as much as we can for you. Better than us what exactly is going to fit your needs. So getting out there on your own, I encourage that a lot.
Mhm. Buying a home without an agent. So just things to be aware of. Things that, if you're going to decide to sell your house by yourself, it's obviously something you can do. It's just nice to prepare yourself for what is going to happen. You're going to need disclosures. You're going to need paperwork. You're going to need certain things done timely, which is why it's recommended that you may not hire an agent, but it is a pretty good idea to hire an attorney or some sort to help facilitate the transaction from start to close. I mean, again, like Ryan said earlier in this presentation, this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest purchase that you might make. I mean, it's a big deal. And, you know, you don't want to let anything slip through the cracks. It's right there, order an independent appraisal if you're going to list your house. That way you,
This is if they're buying.
oh, I'm
still.
sorry, that's so buying. So order an independent appraisal, because if you're going to get a loan, your loan officer is going to do an appraisal, but it's still good for you to do it yourself. Third party, it's somebody coming in and they're going to tell you, you know, yes or no, what this house is worth. That way you're confident going in and you're not going to bid way over, or you're not going to bid way under. You're going to come in at a competitive price because you did the research and work and you're confident that what you're offering is a correct price. And again, I always recommend my buyers to hire a home inspector. Whether you are working with an agent or not, you just never know. And there's so many things in a house that can be looked over on a tour. You can go through the house, you could show it and walk through it 3 times. But you're not going to know all the little things, what outlets might not work currently. There could be a leak somewhere that you don't know. The inspector is going to crawl in the areas, the small cracks, the dark areas, and see really the guts of the home. You know, they're not miracle workers. They can't see through walls, but they are going to test all your major mechanicals. They're going to test, make sure your furnace, your air, your plumbing is working okay. You don't have any major leaks anywhere. So I always recommend to have an inspector come out with you. And they usually always invite the buyers to come along. They're a lot of times they're very educational. I try to go to all my buyers inspections because I learn something every single time. There's always something different. There's not one house that's the same, or probably there's not a house in the market that doesn't have an issue. So, and again, it's good to hire a qualified inspector because, which I'm kind of plugging, you know, we got an inspector coming on later, but you know, you have that backing and you have that, I know what's what, I know what the house has, and it's just good to have that confidence when you're going in, especially if you're not going to have an agent helping you with the transaction.
And even if it is a first sale by owner, you can still contact an agent that you're working with, and they're happy to reach out to the seller for you. And a lot of times they can still work something out with the seller and represent just you in the transaction, maybe not the seller. But I have some clients that have done that. And, you know, sometimes the seller is not willing to work with an agent, but I'm still happy to try to help a buyer as much as I can, because at the end of the day, serving you guys is the most important thing, and taking care of us is second fiddle. So.
Mhm. So again, when you have a home, you know, you've been on the search, we think we found the perfect home. It's important to inspect the house very carefully. Again, hire an inspector. You know, there's certain brokerages even have you sign a disclosure and recommending you, hey, we recommend that you get an inspection. You just never know what's going to happen with a house. You're going to want to take an account to, again, where are you at in the neighborhood? Can your kids walk to school? Can you bike to the nearest park? Are there grocery stores around you, or do you have to go all the way to the other side of town to go to the grocery store you like? You know, what do the other houses on the streets look like? Are they, you know, do they all conform? Are they all kind of different where they're all different colors? Are they all, you know, is it very conforming? You know, there's a lot of different factors to take into account. Estimate your maintenance costs. How hot, you know, you go out and get a giant house, you got to heat and cool that house too. You know, so there's a lot of things that you want to take into account, so you don't get yourself in a situation that you're like, man, I wish I had a realtor.
And observing other homes on the street too, which I think is important, because I've had this happen. Unfortunately, sometimes I go to sell a house and it's a beautiful house, and the neighbors on the left and the right hand side of the house maybe haven't kept up the maintenance of their house. And, you know, no matter how beautiful your house is, your market is still what's sold around you and what's going on around you. So it's important to take a look at, is there pride in ownership around you? Are people maintaining their properties? Because that does directly impact the value of your home, which may not be important the day you buy it, but you may need to sell that house, and someday that's going to be important to the value of, maintaining that value in your home. Determining fair market value, kind of what I was just hitting on there. You want to make sure you've done your research, or your agent's done their research. What has sold in that area. Right now the market's changing so rapidly that we kind of look at 6 months, maybe to a year, and what's sold in the area to kind of determine what the market value is. And each home is different, so there might be a 2-story house down the street and you're looking at maybe buying a 1-story home, and that house is 4 bedrooms and you're looking at 3 bedrooms or 1 bath versus 2 baths. So we take all of those values into consideration when we look at the market value versus one another. And price per square footage is something that we do still use as well, to estimate the value. The only thing that I would say on price per square foot, that we've had some appraisers come in and talk to us, and below grade, like if it's a basement or if it's a tri-level, that lower level is not valued at the same as a 2nd story or above grade. So that's something to consider too, when you're looking at values of homes, that they may be a very nice finished basement, but they don't consider that value as much as they would in a upstairs or above grade dwelling. So
So once you have been out looking, we found a house, we found one, we were pre-qualified, we like this house, we're ready to put an offer in. So we're gonna kind of talk about how you prepare your offer. First off, you're gonna want to determine, well, what price are we gonna come in at? Well, you're gonna know that based on the research that either you or your agent's done with pulling the comps, looking at the neighborhood, you drove by, you have visited the home, you've walked through it, you've been in the backyard, you've spent some time there. All of those factors are going to come into your inevitable price. Like, what are we going to come in at? And so when you do that research, you're confident with that number that you're going to put in your offer. Earnest money, the amount of earnest money, I get a lot of questions about what earnest money is. It kind of sounds funny, but basically all it is a payment from the buyer. It's just an upfront payment saying, hey, we are serious with our offer. So serious, in fact, that we will place X amount of dollars in a escrow account, and it will be held there until our property closes. And that can be very helpful, and especially in this kind of market when you're dealing with multiple offers, multiple people bidding on a house, for any really reason that you want to be serious, like let the seller know this is the house I love, I want it, so here's some extra money on top of. And then with that earnest money, you get it back at the end of the transaction, or you could even apply it to different costs of the transaction, whether it be your closing costs at the end. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. You're going to need your full legal names, who's purchasing the house. Really, it's going to be who's on the loan. So if both of you as spouses are both on the loan, then you'll both be signing the contract. If it's just one, only one person's going to be signing the contract, whoever is on the loan. Provision for home inspections. There's a spot in the contract that talks about what kind of inspections that we're going to want to do, if any, and also how long of a window do we get to do these inspections, because they're not going to let us keep coming in from the entire time that it happens. So we have a set deadline that we have to make sure that we get inspectors out in time, make sure we get a report back in a timely manner, make sure that we ask for any major defects or anything that's major to be fixed, or come up with some kind of agreement between you and the seller. Again, that's what you'll use your agent for, to negotiate, to eventually come to a agreement on price. And then closing dates, the last one what you're going to want to choose, is is the house vacant? You're going to get the house. Are you going to get it when it closes? Are you using an FHA or are you using an FHA or a government-backed loan product? Those take a little bit longer to close than your typical, say, conventional loan. A lot of times, conventional can be closed in 30 days. Sometimes cash can be closed in a couple weeks. And then the FHA, USDA, because there's some extra things we got to do, some extra appraisals, little things here and there that kind of get stretched out to maybe the 45-day range. And that's something that you are going to need to take into account in your offer. Again, so I was talking about the types of financing that you're going to want to get. So if you have a conventional loan, is it conventional? How much should we put down? Who's the lender? Are we FHA? If so, again, how much down? Are we going to need to sign a little bit of extra paperwork here that will have to come up? There's certain guidelines that we'll have to follow. So again, it's something you want to pay attention to. We got to talk about what's being left behind. Does the appliances stay? Does the lawnmower stay? Maybe they're moving out from a big 4-acre property to a townhouse in the city, and they don't need their lawnmower anymore. That can be negotiated in the contract, believe it or not. I mean, there's all different types of things that you can do, or that can be left from the property.
And whether it's on the listing, like if they say appliances stay, you want to make sure that it's still in writing and signed by both parties, because just because it's on that listing, if it's not signed in the contract, it's hard to go back on that. And some lenders are picky about that and they don't want it on the purchase contract items of no value. So sometimes we got to put it on a separate addendum. But no matter what, if it's something that you're insistent on staying, please make sure that it's in writing and signed by both parties.
Yeah, that's very important. All contingencies. So you're going to want to lay out any contingencies. Contingencies are basically just, they're just, I don't want to say stipulations, but how do you define a word without using the word?
Well, there could be financing contingencies, your inspections.
Yes. So
or if another buyer may have a house they have to sell before they can purchase. So they may not have the funds to close on this property until they sell that property. So those are all kind of contingencies that can come up.
Yeah, just nailed it. So we have a couple breakdown fees and who pays them. There's a lot of different things to be paid. Who pays for the, there's, first off, who's going to pay for the inspection? Usually, typically it's the buyer, but again, everything's negotiable. Typically the buyer is going to pay for the appraisal because your lender is going to order that for you. And that's something that you're going to pay for. Who's going to pay there's title fees, there's all different types of small, big fees that go down. And so it's important to know who pays them and who doesn't.
One of the biggest ones we see a lot too is closing costs. You're going to want to negotiate up front. And you want to try to get a true figure of those closing costs from your lender, because you may have committed all of the money that you have to your down payment, and you might need a seller to help cover your closing costs. So you want to know that up front, kind of what that fee is going to be. The other thing that on fees to break down is if it's a VA loan or the seller has to pay for a termite inspection. That's a requirement for the lender on a VA loan. And then time limit for acceptance, that's kind of changed in the market right now. It used to be that we would try to get you an answer in 24 hours. It's kind of courteous, to the seller, but unfortunately, with it being kind of a seller-driven market right now, we're seeing a lot of times they'll hold it open for 3 or 4 days to try to get as many people through it and kind of review all offers that they might get at that time. So we try to get you an answer as quick as we can, but I like maybe on there because that's kind of the way it's been going right now.
Oh yeah, so talk about contingencies. Here, some of the contingencies that you could come into is your financing contingency. You have the pre-approval letter, but there's still a little bit of work to be done, unfortunately, on the back end. And so, you might have a finance contingency. It could be contingent upon maybe it could be contingent upon the appraisal. Maybe you're not quite confident that what the seller is asking for, and you made an agreement. Okay, well, I'm willing to pay that only if it appraises for it, because we're not going to buy a house that we're not going to pay for a house if it's not valued at what we're at least going to buy it at. Clear title. It's kind of similar to like a title on your car. Basically, it's your deed. Does anyone have? Is there any liens on the property that you're trying to purchase? Are there any maintenance liens or tax liens or any type of thing that could be negative against the property? We want to make sure that we get that searched and taken care of. Again, satisfactory of home and other inspections. There's a general home inspection that's going to get a big scope of the property, and then you're going to be able to go back and say, okay, well, he flagged something on the roof, or he flagged something in the basement structural wise. So I want to get a roofer out here that specializes in those types of things. That's going to be in the contract that you're going to ask for. It could be a contingency of sale of an existing home. Ryan mentioned that earlier. They put an offer in and it could get accepted, but we got a house to sell first. So that's another thing to take into account that could affect the time of closing, because if you have issues or you need to get in the house ASAP, well, if they are contingent upon the sale of their home, you may not get in for 30, 60, whatever the contingency period is. It could be a lot longer. And you could include a down payment assistance program, or really anything that can affect, change, or modify the contract. You want it in writing and signed by both parties.
And that down payment assistance program, like if you've applied for OFA funds or something like that, there's a certain period where those funds come in. So we would just want to, like you said, notify the seller up front so that they're aware that we have to have those funds before we can proceed on to close on the property. One other thing I just wanted to mention in tandem with the inspections and the earnest deposit, because I think people worry about this a lot. Committing to giving that earnest deposit up front, that money goes back to you unless you would breach the contract. But a lot of times people worry about, well, what if I find something wrong with the home? If you find something wrong on the inspections, we fill out what's called a post-inspection agreement that asks the seller to make those repairs for you. If the seller isn't willing to make the repairs that you've requested, then you get a release from the contract and you get that earnest deposit. I just think that's something that people wonder about sometimes. I just wanted to clear that up.
Absolutely.
Just talking about kind of the basic terms of negotiating. So, we can do all of our research all day long on what the value of the property is. But at the end of the day, I like to tell people all the time that a property is worth what a seller is willing to take and what a buyer is willing to give for it. So a seller can accept your offer, reject your offer, or counter your offer. And as a buyer, you have the right to do any of those three things to their terms as well. You can accept a counter offer from them, you can reject a counter offer, or you can counter offer back to them again. And if I'm representing a seller, I try to discourage rejecting offers at any time that I can. I try to make them, make a counter offer back to you. And if they do reject your offer, if it's too far apart, that doesn't mean that you can't write another offer later on that same property just because they've rejected it. So.
So you heard me talk about escrow earlier with the earnest money. So basically escrow is just a pocket basically that can kind of mediate between the buyer and the seller. So whether that's with financials, whether that's with the transfer of the property, whatever it may be, they're going to have a lot of things to be done in the time of the transaction. You're going to have to make between making your loan application, your lender's going to have to order the appraisal. once you've done all your inspections, the surveys done and required, title and homeowner insurance has been obtained, like all of this stuff sits on the sidelines. You're going to do prepaids. You're going to hear your lenders talk about prepaids. You're going to pay a lot of different things up front, and it's going to be held again in escrow, which is generally a title company that is going to facilitate the transaction and make sure the fees that have been paid get paid from each party. Make sure that the everything is correct. Everything is as it should be in the transaction. There are no outside dealings. They're going to make sure that everything is as it should be. It's great to have it's a third party person. That way it's not someone that, we are represented by or vice versa. It's a neutral party closing the real estate transaction.
You want to make sure they close the mortgage that the previous seller may have had on it. Liens like he talked about before, you want to make sure the taxes are current. So yeah, having a reputable third party in that capacity is very important. For your protection, get a home inspection. Yeah, we couldn't stress that more. I mean, even on new construction, even I have people that, they can't believe things that are done the way they're done. So in this market, it is crazy right now. Like we said, people are, offering over asking price and waiving all inspections. And I can't discourage that enough. I just because you do inspections doesn't mean you're asking a seller to make repairs. A lot of times they get hung up, well, I'm selling the property as is. And that's okay if they don't want to make any repairs, but you still have the right to do inspections for your knowledge so that you know what you're tackling up front. So we always encourage inspections. I like to say, there's a whole list of things that you can have inspected. At the very least, we always encourage a whole house inspection. That should be pretty all encompassing. They're going to get on the roof, weather permitting, check all your electrical outlets, your panel, check all of your plumbing, your appliances that they can get to, toilets, some things that are important that aren't covered typically in a whole house inspection is a termite inspection. We see those quite frequently, radon inspections. And if you're in the county, we always encourage a well test. And a lot of time, and what I like to write in the contract is that we're going to ask the seller to pump the septic and provide us a report that it's functioning properly, because those are really some big ticket items that can come on fast if those aren't inspected up front. So we always encourage house inspection. And if the seller decides to take someone else's offer, I think it's still in your best interest to find another property, because it's really important that you have those inspected.
Yeah, just like you said, just because a lot of people, and especially in larger metropolitan areas, are doing whatever they can to get a house. Again, I don't ever recommend it. If you are going to buy a house and not inspect it, then you deserve that house and everything that comes with it. And that's what I tell my buyer. And I know it's kind of sinister, but that's really how it is. You got to really understand that what you're doing is, you're buying a house and you want to make sure that you are protected in every way that you can be. Insurance. So there's, we're all familiar with insurance. It's very, 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 very important to have. In fact, you cannot close a real estate transaction without it, especially if you're getting financed. So that's what we talked about, kind of the prepaid. You're going to pay a lot of your insurance up front, which is great because you won't have to pay it later, but they are going to, again, escrow it to the side. So it's there and it ensures that it gets paid. And a lot of times what they do to make it easier for most people is a lot of their insurance and stuff get wrapped up into their mortgage. So it gets paid regardless. And you don't have to think, okay, well, I'm paying my mortgage. Well, did I pay my homeowner's insurance? Oh, maybe it was my car insurance. Or, it's wrapped up in the payment and it's paid every time, on time, every time, because you never want to not have sometimes with a lot of people, your largest asset unprotected. You need to have it protected. You're going to want to know different types of insurance. Is the house you're buying in a flood zone? flood insurance can be very expensive sometimes, and it doesn't matter if FEMA makes the boundaries and the guidelines, and it doesn't matter if it's a 10 acre property and a 5 by 5 square foot in the corner is in a flood zone. You gotta have flood insurance. Like it's kind of crazy, and so you want to make sure that you want to look at where your property is and know what insurance do I need to ensure that I'm protected, because you may not need it. You may not need you may not need flood or special hazard insurance. You may not need it, but sometimes you might. Mortgage insurance, you see that a lot in like the FHA programs, USDA programs, VA programs.
If you have less than 20% down.
Yeah, even conventional, if you don't have 20% down, mortgage companies and banks will charge mortgage insurance, which is just, again, it's usually wrapped up in your payment, and it's just to ensure the bank or lender that you are going to make your promissory and pay your mortgage back. Title insurance is something that, so you're always going to do a title insurance, or a title search, that's going to happen regardless. And then you're going to get an option to purchase title insurance, which will cover, so your title policy, title search will cover everything up to the transaction. The title insurance covers you
back 45 years.
45 years. So the title search will go back 45 years. The title insurance will cover anything past that, any errors in the entering of, it could be a typo with them entering it from in the recording office. Really, it just kind of encompasses you and ensures you that no matter what, you've got clear and free title. It is something that I recommend to a lot of my clients, just especially for peace of mind. The mortgage life insurance, not recommended. Home warranties sometimes are beneficial, especially if, sometimes maybe you really like a house, but there might be a couple shingles missing, or maybe everything's great with the house and redone except for a 30-year-old furnace, and you're not really confident that that's going to last. There's home warranties to help cover major mechanical costs, or at least that can help kind of offset the large cost of these issues when they come along. So again, going on homeowners insurance, you got to make sure it's on the home. If you have detached a garage or a barn, or any type of other shed structure, anything else that you might want insured, does your insurance just cover the property? Does it cover everything inside? Replacement cost basically is everything in your house tallied up. What it's going to cost to replace the home that you if it was to burn down or get blown away in a tornado, whatever it is. It's that replacement cost is the number that the insurance comes up with, that it's going to cost with current materials and everything, what it will cost to rebuild your house. And again, liability protection, just another way to protect yourself.
Yeah, you're kind of doing it.
Yeah. So again, so the cost of insurance, geographic loss of experience, type of construction, fire protection. You're going to want to know, is there anything on your land? Like if there's anything specific on your land that's an added value, like geographically wise, that gets burned up or destroyed, that could cause a change in value of your property. That's something that you're going to make sure you get insured. Same with the type of construction and fire protection. What contents inside are insured. The size and condition of the house is also something to take into account. Your insurance is going to literally look up the closest fire department to see how long it takes for an emergency service to reach your house, and that's going to affect the price of your insurance. If you're out in the county and you live pretty far from the nearest fire department, you might pay a little bit more for that, rather than as opposed to living in town, close to a few miles down the road from a firehouse. And then again, your credit score is also something that is going to affect your cost of insurance. Unfortunately, it affects cost about everything, but this is another thing that it goes to. Again, there's a bunch of different types of policies. The amount in which you want to cover, I mean, you may not get just the value of the house insured. You might insure it for more. That's something that you can do. How much is your deductible? Is it worth, is it worth to make an insurance claim if my deductible is higher than the repair? It's a lot of things that you're going to want to take into account with your insurance. There's a bunch of different types. I'm sure your insurance agent would love to talk to you about different types of optional coverages that you can purchase that are kind of add-ons to the typical main package. And there's, again, discounts. You see them in the commercials all the time if you bundle up your insurances. And again, if you do certain programs and things, some insurances might have you do classes like you're doing now, and they might give you a discount on your property rate. If you go through a home maintenance or some kind of class or do some kind of continuing education, you might get some breaks on that.
And just like lenders and realtors, your lender may suggest or give you a quote for your homeowner's insurance. That does not mean that that's the company you have to use. You can shop that rate around as well and get like he said, a lot of times it's escrowed, so that can influence your monthly payment if you get a lower rate on that as well.
Go ahead, Disney.
Sure. So we've got our offer accepted, we've done our inspections, and we're moving towards closing. Some things that we typically do for that is, a lot of times you want to make sure you do a final walkthrough. There may have been some things that we negotiated out for repairs, and they may have given us a copy of the paid invoice, but we still want to go over and inspect it and make sure that repair was done to our satisfaction. We're going to get a copy of the closing disclosure. You get that from your lender, and we get a copy from the title company. We like to go over those figures and make sure those are the same figures, numbers that you saw from your lender, your payments the same, the money that you're bringing, all those sorts of things. And then you want to obtain a cashier's check. If it's less than $10,000 that you're bringing to pay, you can do that. If not, you're probably going to have to wire those funds to the title company to pay for your down payment and any closing costs that you might have incurred. So that total balance, we'd like to make sure we get that to you at least the day before closing, sometimes sooner than that. So if we see anything that isn't what we thought it was going to be, we can make those changes and not delay the closing. And then the other thing, we always have it in your packet for you. All the utility companies, you're going to want to call and get those transferred into your scheduled to transfer into your name. Water, electric, gas. We have a list of trash providers, internet, cable, all those.
You also want to make sure that the seller has paid the bills and they're all up to date, because you don't want to get in there and have the issues of trying to call your utility company and then there's some money on the balance. So that's not something fun that you want to run into.
And this is the closing documents itself that the title agent or escrow agent's going to go over with you at the closing. We always sit in on our closings and make sure you're comfortable with everything you're signing. So again, your closing disclosure, that's what we're going to review with you up front, but those should go in line with your loan estimate. And that's when you're going to sign. You're going to get a copy of the survey form from the bank. They do that for you. If you do decide to purchase title insurance, that's when you would do that as well. They're going to also sign the deed over to you at that time. That then gets recorded, and they'll mail the copy of the original deed to you in about 6 to 8 weeks. You're going to get a lot of junk mail in that time that's going to say, hey, if you pay us $86 to get a copy of your deed, we'll mail it to you. Unfortunately, you don't need to do that. The title company is going to send you your original copy in the mail. And anytime you get any kind of mail that looks real official, just make sure you call your agent or your lender and make sure that it's something, because if they're asking you to pay for anything at all, most of the time it's a scam and it's not something that you need to do.
Closing costs. So this is important in a lot of different ways. Your closing costs are going to cover your, again, I talked about your loan officers are going to have to order an appraisal. That's in your closing costs. They're going to pull your credit. That costs money. The person that's doing the loan, the processor, they charge a fee to service your loan and to process it and to do it. So that's included in the closing costs. The underwriting, the whole process between getting it started is included in your closing costs. You heard me talk about prepaids earlier with your insurance or interest, anything, taxes a lot of times gets escrowed as well. You can choose not to, but majority of people have their taxes and insurances escrowed into their payments for the safety of not forgetting, or, it's making sure that it's always paid. It's going to have any title charges, paying the attorneys or any service title work that they've done, any government recordings and transfer fees are going to be in there. If they had to hire a notary, if they ordered the survey, all of that stuff will be in your closing costs. And it's important to know what kind of talking about, kind of backtracking to your offer and your type of financing, because there is certain amounts of closing costs that we can ask the seller to pay for, and it varies based on what type of loan you have. So like Ryan mentioned earlier, maybe you had all your money saved and most of it was tied up into your down payment, and you need some help from the seller to pay closing costs. Well, how much can we ask for? That's going to depend on what kind of loan we have, and it's very important. Yeah, I think it was that all I had there.
All right, so this is what the contract looks like. We are just at 7 o'clock. We can take a few minutes to review this quickly, but before we do that, I wanted to check in with our students and see if they have any questions for us so far. Anybody out there have any questions about working with a realtor or shopping for a home?
Hi, this is Valdisa. I just had a question about the closing costs in regards to like how long it usually takes. Like once you make the payment on the closing costs, or if you get the seller to take on some of the closing costs, like once you've done that and you've gotten like a receipt for it, how long does it usually take to get the title or deed?
So as far as closing costs go, that would be negotiated up front, what the seller is willing to pay on your behalf. But closing costs are due at the time of closing. They're basically just included in on top of whatever your down payment is for what you would be responsible for. So that whole lump sum is paid at the time of the closing. So typically right now, if it's a conventional, even FHA loans right now, USDA sometimes takes a little longer. It's from the day they accept your offer, it's about 30 days. From then is when we would close. So all of that money, the percent down plus any closing costs that the seller wasn't able to cover for you would be due in that 30 days. And then, so you close on that date, and then it takes about 6 weeks to get your deed in the mail from them, but you've owned the property. And your first payment is not due until the month after you close on the property. So you pay that, you make that payment, but then you don't make your first mortgage payment until that following month. So you pretty much get your deed as you start making your monthly payments.
Yes, and you don't have to have your deed in hand to move in.
Correct.
That's all negotiated in the contract as well. So you may get automatic, like right away, they'll hand the keys to you and you can go and move in, or it might be give us 30 days to move out first, and then you get the keys. So all that can be negotiated too.
Oh, thank you. That was actually my next question. So thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All right. Well, if you think of anything, feel free to jump in. So maybe we can review the contract in about 5 minutes or so to give the other presenters time to go. Does that sound okay, guys?
Sure. Want me to do a quick?
Sure.
I'll do a quick rundown of it. So this is our Springfield Board of Realtors purchase contract. This is what once you find the house of your choosing, this is what we would fill out to let the seller know what terms we're willing to offer them to make this house yours. So at the top there, we're gonna list who the selling realtor is. So that would be, in this case, representing you as a buyer, that would be our firm, Real Estate Two. And then what firm has the property listed? So is it listed with another Real Estate Two agent? Is it listed with another company? And even if it's listed with another brokerage, you can still work with us and we can represent you in the transaction. Or even if it's a for sale by owner, we can still use this purchase contract to represent you in that. Moving down from that, we're going to disclose, what city or township, what county is it in the state of Ohio. And then we're going to put the property address, state, city, zip code, and then the permanent parcel number. That's how the auditor identifies your lot. So sometimes, a house may be on several parcels. So we want to make sure all of those parcel numbers are included in this purchase contract if it's more than one parcel that's being transferred. Moving down to the middle there, right before purchase price, is where we're going to list out anything that we want to stay with the property that's not already an attached fixture. Like we talked about earlier, appliances, things like that, a gazebo out back, a hot tub, some of those types of things are often what we see there. And then our purchase price, that's where we're going to let the seller know what we're willing to give them for the property. And then we're going to let them know how we're going to finance it. Is it conventional? Is it VA, FHA, rural development, USDA, any of those? And then we're going to let them know how much % down we're putting on it. So what's our down payment going to be? If it's cash, that's a separate there, and we just have to provide a proof of funds letter to them. And then this gives us a little window of time to give them a pre-approval letter. I always encourage that we have that when we submit the offer. We want to give them a copy of our letter that just shows that we are pre-qualified for the purchase amount that we've offered them. The closing costs, that's settlement charges. That's what we've been talking about, where we can ask the seller to pay some of those on your behalf. Depending on the loan type, as Tim mentioned, there's a limit of up to 3% of the purchase price on some of those loan types for what they can pay in closing costs. So that's the first page. And then moving to the second page, this is strictly for if you're contingent on selling a property before you can purchase this property. This is the language that we would write in there that, you would have to sell that property before you could proceed on with purchasing this property. That's that first paragraph there. And then closing, this is where we're going to tell the seller, we want to close by X amount date. So right now we would put typically 30 days. So we would put on there, June 17th, we would close. And then Bella, as you asked about possession, this is right here where we're going to talk about when you get to, occupy the property. So if they live there, they may need 30 days, they may need 15 days, 10 days, whatever it is, or we may check that at closing. That means you get the keys when you sign for it. There also may be a tenant living there, and we might have to honor the tenant's rights to possession as well. And then there's a home warranty disclosure where we can ask that we're going to purchase one ourselves, or the seller can purchase one on your behalf. And those typically run about $500, and they cover you for the first year that you own the property. Anything that may go wrong with the property, it can cover you with a deductible. The next paragraph is earnest deposit, which we've talked about several different times. That's where we're just going to let them know how much earnest deposit we're willing to put down once they accept our offer. And then we have inspection period. So once they've accepted our offer, we're going to ask for X amount of days to complete any of these inspections that you would want to. And just checking the box here gives you the opportunity to do that inspection. It doesn't mean that you're doing all those. It just gives you the right to do those once you've checked that box. And then the paragraph after that just says after, let's say we put 10 days. After that 10 days, it just says that we're accepting the property in the condition that it's in if we haven't completed all of our inspections by that time. And then we do have a 10-day repair period after the inspections, like that post-inspection agreement I talked about. We can ask the seller to make repairs that we've discovered in our inspections, and they have the right to say, yes, we will, or no, we won't. And if they don't agree to make those repairs, you do have the right to be released from the contract. Lead-based paint, yeah, if it's built that's okay. If it's built prior to 1978, we do have them fill out a lead-based paint disclosure that we would review with you and sign that as well. Any property built prior to 78. Right to cancel, that's kind of what I touched on there. So if they, do not agree to make those repairs, you do have the right to be released from that contract. Any other addenda we would add there, kind of like that septic being pumped. If it was in the county, that's kind of where we would add anything like that that's not standard just in our contract. Other addenda, that's where we would check the boxes. Proof of funds, like I mentioned, we might attach that letter. Lead-based paint if it was built prior to 78. Property disclosure forms, they're required by the state of Ohio to fill that out for you. Anything they know within the last 5 years to have occurred in the property, they're required by law to disclose that to you. So we want to review all those documents, and we're just acknowledging that those are a part of our offer here. Section J is if it's in a homeowners association or a condominium. We want copies of the bylaws, rules, and restrictions so you know what you can and can't do in the property you're occupying. We want that up front before you move in and find out that you can't have a dog or whatever it might be. And then if there are dues with that, we like to try to get those prorated through the date of closing. So we don't want you paying dues that they incurred while they lived there. The deed, we were going to ask them to convey a clear and clean title to us. That's a contingency already written in. And then title insurance, again, we're just signing that you're acknowledged you'll be offered it at closing. This doesn't say that you're purchasing it, just that you're aware that it will be offered to you. Damage to the building, let's say a tree falls on the house. This says that you have the right to either A, accept the seller's insurance proceeds and continue, or B, you do have the right to terminate the contract if something would damage the building or property prior to closing. Fair housing and block busting, we do nothing illegal in regards to that. Ohio sex offender registration, that is public record. So if that's something that you're concerned with, we encourage you to do that research on your own, but we don't do that for you. Electronic signatures, we do recognize that as valid form of acknowledgement. So we have what's called dot loop that we use quite a bit, that you may be able to sign some things electronically, or the seller may sign electronically, and we're just saying that is a valid form of signature. Proration of taxes, we like to try to get long proration here in Clark County. We pay our taxes in arrears. So the tax bill that's due this year is actually for last year's taxes. So what we're asking is that they pay the taxes through the date of closing. So let's say we closed June 30th of this year. That tax bill is not going to come until next year, but they're going to give you a credit from January 1st through June 30th of this year, so that they paid their share of when they owned the property. And this really doesn't, if your taxes are escrow, this doesn't really apply too much. Just know that they've paid the taxes from the time that they own the property to the day that you guys closed on it. And then this just kind of goes on through representations. Again, who's representing who. We also have a agency disclosure form that we would fill out. And just says, this is a legally binding contract between you as purchaser and the sellers. Both parties initial again to acknowledge that. And then this is where we leave this offer open for acceptance and acknowledgement for X amount of time. So like I said, standard is 24 hours and we try to get you an answer. And then right down there, seller's response, that's where we're going to see that they either accept, reject, or counter us. And then both agents sign the contract, and then there's a receipt of earnest deposit. If they do accept our contract, that's where we're going to collect that earnest deposit from you and deposit it into our non-interest bearing trust account. And then there's that agency disclosure statement that I was mentioning. So we just fill out the property address. We list your legal name as buyer, who the legal seller is, and then that's where we're going to disclose what brokerages are involved, what agents are involved. So if there's two different agents with two different brokerages, we fill out that first part. If it's two agents in the same brokerage, here at Real Estate 2, we always act as dual agent if both agents are from this company. Or like I said, if you're buying a for sale by owner, we can use that last section there where maybe only one party is represented by an agent in the transaction and we want to disclose that. Or if an agent's related to the buyer or seller, there's a place for that too, because the other party needs to be aware that the seller is related to the agent that's representing them. And then that's, again, just dual agency broken down that we've kind of talked about.
All right, I believe that's pretty close to all of the slides.
Yeah,
I appreciate you being very thorough and taking the time for questions.
sure.
I did see one other question that came through in the chat box while you were finishing up there. The question was, are you licensed for Springfield or outside of the area?
We are licensed for the entire state of Ohio.
Awesome.
We pretty much stay in Clark and Champaign County just because that's where we feel that we're knowledgeable, but we are, yeah, our license is good for the entire state.
Perfect. And I will be sending out these slides to you. So if you have more questions or think of something tonight while you're sleeping on it, you know how to reach out to these fellas, Ryan and Tim over at Real Estate 2. Any other last minute questions before we move on this evening? Oh, I see a comment from Belle saying, excellent. Thank you. Great job, guys.
Thanks.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with the class. And we'll definitely pass on your contact information.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
Well, welcome. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay. So up next, we have Leslie Vasquez from the Health Department talking with us briefly about lead in the homes. Leslie, thanks for your patience. It is all yours.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen, hopefully with no trouble. I think looks like.
Perfect.
Yes, awesome. All right. Okay, so the purpose of my presentation is to go over things that you should be thinking about in terms of lead before you make a purchase. And so I'm going to start out with some basic lead information. And I'm sorry, my camera is on one computer screen and the presentation is on another. So unfortunately, I probably will be looking away from you a fair amount, and I don't mean to do that. So lead is a naturally occurring element that is used in industry still today. The properties make it useful in many trades, including construction and plumbing. It is highly toxic, and it's easily incorporated into the body and will replace other essential minerals like iron and calcium if you don't have enough of those in your system. The danger of lead is most pronounced for children because their bodies are so little and rapidly developing. And also, you know how youngsters are, that especially at the youngest ages, they're constantly putting their hands in their mouth, objects in their mouth, they're scooting along the floor. and lead dust is the primary source of lead poisoning for children. So over the years, we've learned a lot, and basically there is just no safe level of lead at all in a human being's bloodstream. So children get lead poisoned through ingestion of lead from the environment, and it's easily absorbed through the digestive system. It causes neurological problems and can damage the nervous system. Long-term repercussions include intellectual deficit, developmental delays, and increased aggression. It's one of those things that can mirror other problems like ADD, behavioral issues for students in school, but it is known that lead causes these things, and the only way to know if a child's been lead poisoned is to have that child tested for lead. So some of the most common sources of lead, basically the primary one is lead dust, and lead dust in a home is created from friction when you're putting up a window and down or opening a door and closing it, because lead was used in paint up until 1978. Many countries banned it before the United States did, because it was known that it was dangerous. But anyway, so any home that was built before 1978 will most likely, almost definitely, have lead paint in it. And if the windows are still the original windows, every time you put that window up and down, it creates friction, which creates lead dust, which gets in the air, sprinkles all over the place on the floor. So that's the most common. Hobbies, though, also can give people lead exposure. Certain ceramics, stained glass making, shooting, crafting of ammunition, and soldering are a couple examples. There are also occupations that can expose people to lead, like smelting, welding, battery production, mining, and recycling. We actually had a sheriff's deputy in our area who tested positive for lead, and it was basically from working at the shooting range. So then also soil is another source of lead contamination due to just sort of the industrial history. There it goes. So I'm going to talk for a minute about lead in our area, within our county, and then also within the state of Ohio. Currently, in the Springfield area, we have 38 homes that have been deemed lead hazards and are placarded. No one is supposed to be living in those homes. Over 78% of our housing stock was built before 1978. So there's just a super high presence of lead in our community. There are certain zip codes that are considered high risk. All of the zip codes in the city of Springfield are high risk. And it's when you live in a high risk zip code, all children are by law are mandated to be lead tested at ages 1 and 2. And it's highly recommended for pregnant women to also have a lead screening if they live in a high risk area. So 5% of Ohio children have tested with elevated blood lead levels, and that is more than twice the national average of 1.9%. There actually was an article in the Springfield News Sun today about lead poisoning and the health department's initiative, and I'll be happy to send a copy of that to Rachel that she can forward to you along with a few other items. So now we're getting to the stuff you're really interested in, lead in the home buying process. You want to be looking at when was a home constructed, looking at the I don't know, my little easy words are escaping me. Well, you just want to check it for peeling, cracking paint, especially around those high friction areas that I was mentioning, like the windows and the doors. Is there exterior paint that's peeling or cracking? Any recent renovations, because so maybe the windows were replaced, but if the home wasn't properly cleaned after that, there can still be a lot of lead contamination on the floors, in the carpeting, windowsills, things like that. So sellers, as they mentioned before, they are required by law to disclose any known home lead hazards. I want to take one more minute to back up to the soil part of things and peeling paint on the outside. What you'll find can happen is that the soil around a home can also be contaminated for lead. And so like lots of us like to plant our flowers there, but we also sometimes will plant our vegetable gardens. That's another thing that you just need to be aware of and be cognizant of when you plant a garden in your future home. So there are practices that are considered lead safe maintenance and repair practices. Basically, if a home has been deemed a lead hazard, the best thing to do is to have it professionally dealt with. So you want to consult with a professional. In the state of Ohio, people are licensed to work with lead, and I can get you more information about that. So as a best practice, you want to consult with a professional, because if things aren't done properly, if a contractor just comes in and they start sanding and even scraping paint, it creates a lot of lead dust and it's putting everybody at risk. Now, if you're the type of person that wants to do repairs yourself, which a lot of us are and do, there are what are called safe lead practices so that you do that properly. And there is a brochure put together by the Environmental Protection Agency that, oh, yeah, I'm sharing my screen. Well, I guess you can see me too. That outlines lead safe guidelines if you're renovating, repairing, or painting. And I'll send a link to that document as well. So research shows that general renovation activities associated with increased risk are associated with an increased risk of elevated blood lead levels in children, which is what I was just sort of sharing with you. So here are some examples of what would be considered a lead safe work practice. So first, you want to contain the area to prevent any escaping dust. So if you are scraping paint in the dining room, you want to use plastic sheeting with tape to close off contact with the kitchen and other rooms to keep dust and debris in the one area. Prior to starting work, you want to remove all the objects that are in the area, including furniture, rugs, window coverings, or cover them with plastic sheeting and tape. It is highly recommended to use wet cleaning methods versus dry cleaning methods. I mean, for the most part, we all dust with a dry rag. Now we have Swifters and sweeping our floor, you know, that's, it actually makes dust, it spreads it, it makes it more airborne. Like, yes, you're getting some of it, but it can spread it as well. And if there is lead contamination, that would not be a good thing. You want to use wet cleaning practices. So like using a damp cloth to wipe up and to dust. And then also we recommend using a wet mop versus sweeping. There are what are called HEPA vacuums. It's a high efficiency particulate air filter. And if you end up doing any type of home repairs, we do have them here at the health department available for free to loan folks in the community. And that is another really good way for cleaning up if you do have lead contaminated debris. So you also, of course, you want to wash your hands, your tools frequently, and then clean your work shoes prior to exiting the work area. So lead safe practices. There are simple things that you can do that reduce your family's lead poisoning risk. I already mentioned the use of the wet cleaning methods. Wash your hands regularly, especially children. If you or someone who visits the home has a lead use occupation or hobby, ask them to leave their shoes outside the living space. And if it's like a spouse or a partner, older teenager that works with lead, you want to wash those clothes separately as well. So it's important to have diets high in calcium and iron because they reduce the lead absorption if it does get into the system. And then you want to consider definitely having your children tested for lead. That's what I have prepared. Actually, there is one other piece of information I want to share with you. Well, I guess I'll share with you, if you would like, I can send a copy of this map that was in the presentation. Like Rachel will get a copy of the presentation and we'll send that to you. But we can send a copy of the map that lists the lead hazard placard homes. My coworker and I put together sort of an overview sheet about lead, the things that are important to know, and I'll include that. And then I already mentioned about the steps for safe, lead safe renovation, repair, and painting. But we also recently put together a list of financial resources that are available should you buy a home and you do need to deal with lead. We wish there were more resources, but I'll send a copy of that as well. So like it includes federal resources, state resources, and then some local resources as well.
Awesome. That's really great. Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, does anybody have questions?
I had a quick question. I'm sorry. I
Sure.
don't mean to dominate the question section, but when it comes to lead, say the seller doesn't tell you that they do have lead, right? And they say that they had it abated or whatever, and then the inspector says, oh no, this still needs to be taken care of. So that slows the process or whatever. Is there like an official process to deal with that in that scenario?
Well, I think you definitely, if there's any reason for concern, you definitely want to have an assessor, a licensed lead assessor, do an assessment of the property. If somebody doesn't disclose and they sell the home anyway, that is a legal issue. Like by law, they have to disclose. For people that are low income, we have a partnership with the Legal Aid Society of Western Ohio. Like we've already been working with a lawyer, because another thing that can happen is that when a lead issue comes up and it's a rental property, sometimes the landlords want to evict people versus addressing the problem. So yeah, you really want to make sure you get that assessment. And then, you can make a decision, which I couldn't really advise you about this, but maybe the selling price goes down because then you're the one that's going to hire a professional to do the lead abatement.
Okay, thank you. That actually makes a lot more sense than what the scenario that was running through my head. So thank you.
Yeah, and just recently also, and I'll send this link, we've added a lot of information about lead and lead safety, which would include lead cleaning practices, but also the renovation and repair, and links to lots of resources on our website, on the Clark County Combined Health District's website. And so I'll be sending that link out for you as well.
Yeah. And Bella, if there's anything that comes back in an inspection that gives you pause, like, I'm not comfortable with this, that could be something that you couldn't potentially negotiate with the seller to say, would you be willing to fix it? Or would you be willing to come down on the price so I can fix it? Those are all things that can be negotiated and compromised on.
Hey, Rachel, can I
I
chime in a
appreciate
minute?
that.
Yeah,
Rachel, can I chime in a minute? Just a couple things too, Bill. remember that your seller has to know that there is lead paint and has to disclose it. It's possible that your seller has only lived there 3 years and has no clue that there's lead paint. So therefore, he would check the box unavailable or, doesn't know. And rightfully, he or she does not know. So, but then again, if let's say that you're going to finance through FHA. FHA is, if they come on the premises to do their FHA inspection, and if they see any peeling paint of any kind, lead or not lead, they're going to make that house, they're going to have to scrape and take care of that peeling paint, or you won't be able to get your financing. So those are two things. And then another thing too is to keep in mind, who's going to be living there. If it's going to be, I'm just throwing this out, if a couple is coming in and they're 50 years old and, maybe, there's not going to be any kids in the house, maybe it's not so much of an issue, but you still want to be very cautious of, number one, the year that the house was built. And like Leslie said, 3/4 of the houses in Clark County are, pre-78. So your chances of getting a lead-based house is pretty high, but just consider all the factors in there too. So, but yeah, and if you did have a lead inspector risk assessment, they could pull out the reading in like 24 hours. If they have a XRF gun, they could do it right then and there and tell you if there's lead-based paint anywhere in the house, inside, outside, stairs, doors, windows, anything. And if they don't have an XRF gun, they could still do it within 24 hours by doing paint samples and sending them off to the lab and get your results that way too.
Thank you. That was all
Excellent.
good.
Thank you so much for that. I did have a question. Is like, that's like a specialist. That's not like what the general inspector would do. That's like a separate.
Correct.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, because a lead risk assessor, I don't know of any home inspectors that are certified, and this is a big important word, licensed to do lead. They may be able to do radon, they may be able to do termite, septic, things like that, but lead is its separate entity. It's one of its own. So yes, it would be a separate lead inspector or risk assessment.
Thank you. I appreciate the information. This is
You're welcome.
really, really informative. Thank you, guys.
Great. Yeah, and Rachel will give you my contact information. So, the Neighborhood Housing Partnership is a great resource. We would be happy to answer any questions that you might have if they come up, as Rachel said, while you're sleeping on it or thinking about it later, don't hesitate to contact us.
Absolutely. I'll be forwarding on the PowerPoint and the other information that Leslie has for us and her contact information, so you can reach out if you prefer to. Thank you so much, Leslie. We appreciate your information.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, I'll talk to you all later. Thank you.
Have a good
See
evening.
you, Leslie.
Thank you. I'm just going to have to figure out now what I do to get
Here, I might be able to do that for you.
Oh, if you could, that would be awesome, because I've lost my, oh, here it is. It's at the top of my shared screen.
Stop participant sharing. Okay, I think we got it.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so James is up next, and I apologize for the short time frame that you have. Things were just going on tonight, and we had lots of good questions. So James is going to talk with us tonight about why home maintenance is important and how to protect the investment that you have.
Can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
Oh, good. First time. Okay, so we're going to do, I don't like seeing these slides over here. We are going to talk real quick, and I promise I'll let you out by 9:30. No, I'm just kidding. You will be out by 8 o'clock. Don't worry. This is going to be home maintenance. Now, I am going to practice on this slide. This is actually a slide presentation that I put together yesterday that's going to be used at Elderly United Senior Services. So I just kind of, asked permission from Rachel and say, hey, can I, and so that's what we're going to do. So I have not, of course, I've seen these slides. I have not talked about these slides in front of anybody. So you're going to be the first to see those. So we're going to talk about spring and summer. The reason why we're doing that is because we are into spring now, and there are different things, you don't have to worry about snow maintenance in the spring. You don't have to worry about it in the summer. You don't have to worry about cleaning your gutters in the winter. So there are certain things that you do at certain times of the year. There are also things that you will do in the spring, that you will do in the summer, that you will do in the fall, like cleaning your gutters, okay? Changing your filters in your furnace, things like that. So if we double up, that's simply because you're going to change the filters in your furnace every 30 days, every 3 months, whatever. It depends on the type of furnace filter that you use. So why is home maintenance so important? Does anybody want to take a stab at that? You unmute, and why is it so important?
Is it because with good maintenance, you can have like higher equity, or with poor maintenance, you can devalue your home?
Yeah, you could definitely devalue, wow, that's a hard word to say. Devalue your home. But it increases the longevity of everything that you are maintaining, like your roof. If you take care of those blown off shingles, or if you cut those trees back, which you're going to see a couple slides of those here in a little bit. If you trim those trees back and get that algae and that moss and all that stuff, those will hinder life expectancy of shingles. Same way with the furnace filter. Put a new furnace filter in today, and the old one that I took out, let's see, 2.5 months, was as brown as the lettering on why is important. That's how brown it was. And it was a pure white filter when I put it in about 2.5 months ago. So extremely important to do home maintenance. And the thing about home maintenance is it's not really that expensive. Just precautionary things, changing your filters, draining your water heater at the end of the year, cleaning out the gutters. Cleaning out the gutters is absolutely free unless you have to have it hired to be done. And there again, we're going to talk about that in the next 2 slides. But a lot of your trimming the trees back, trimming the shrubs off of the house, just doing odds and ends painting and stuff like that. Very inexpensive stuff that can really, make that house last a lot longer. And like Belle said, add value. Here is cleaning out gutters in a safe manner. You see the guy there on the left-hand side. He is very comfortable. He's not overextending. He's got his ladder set properly, and he's just, he's just doing a good job, nice and easy, relaxed, and very safe. He's using what we will call OSHA terms, 3-point stance, to where he has each foot is on the ladder and one hand on the ladder. That's called a 3-point stance. That's a safe in OSHA terms, and he's cleaning them out, with his left hand. And then, of course, you see the before and after on the picture on the right. Your gutters will absolutely function so much more better when you clean those out. And surprisingly, sometimes, I know at my house, I have to clean them more often than you think. And all you have to do, like if you walk outside to take your kids to school one morning and you happen to look in your flower bed and you notice that, something's displaced along the edge of the house, and you look up and you see maybe black streaks over your white gutters. And then you notice that drip line in your mulch is directly under the gutters. You probably have clogged gutters, and then it's not draining and it's just flowing out over the outer edge. That's one way to be able to tell. Sometimes you can just hear it. I know we have a deck on the back side of our bedroom here, and I can, during a heavy storm, I can absolutely tell with the water hitting the deck that it's not working right. And the next morning I'll get up and get the ladder out, and sure enough, there's a big clump of leaves that got hung up in the where the downspout is. And I, get the ladder, take one handful of leaves, and it just gushes out like Niagara Falls. It's all clean and good to go for another couple months. So if you do the chore of cleaning out gutters, please do it in a safe manner. Make sure your ladder's safe. Wooden ladders are kind of ancient. They get brittle, they break, they snap, the rungs snap, they slip. You have to be careful with aluminum ladders if you have electrical wires anywhere nearby, because that can be conductive and you could get, electrocuted. Fiberglass are probably the best. They are the heavier type as far as handling them. So just be careful. And like this next guy, this next slide here, don't try to be Superman. If you cannot do your gutters safely, by all means have it hired done. And you can find somebody. There's organizations that could help you out. There's people you can call. There's people at NHP that you could call, to clean out those gutters. And as you see here, this guy fell. He's in a very, very precarious situation there. And obviously he fell, and now his wife's calling the ambulance to probably got a broken leg or a broken hip or whatever. But bad news. And notice he also fell on that sidewalk, which isn't a good thing. So yeah, definitely gutters and air conditioners. Left-hand side, this is before and after the coils, the fins get cleaned out. That was professionally done. I can tell by the tools that are hanging there that was professionally done. That's just like a seasonal tune-up. Maybe in the springtime you spend $89. They check out all the fluids, the charging. They clean that out. They can hose that off, use air pressure and clean that off. A lot of that can be, as you see the before, can be if there's a dryer vent too close, that can pull that in. Grass clippings is another way of clogging those air conditioner units up. The picture on the right, does anybody know what might have caused that deterioration on those coils? Anybody real quick? It's not weather. It has nothing to do with snow or salt. Anybody want to take a stab at it? Rachel, how about you?
Birds,
What was it?
birds.
Birds?
Birds. What
You're
about
close. It's it's actually an animal.
Oh,
It's dog urine, where
What?
dogs, if you have pets and your dog goes out there and, has to go potty and hikes his leg, and that is what causes that deterioration. And that's actually a picture that I took when I was doing home inspections down in Enon, I believe it was. And sure enough, that's bad news. So if you see your dog doing that, put a stop to it. It's gonna ruin that unit. Okay, and then we talked about furnace filters. This is kind of what I was talking about this morning, or that I saw this morning. You have a nice white clean filter, and the one is just filthy dirty. This is just a lot of dust in this one, a lot of dirt, a lot of stuff floating in the air. The one that I changed out this morning was simply from heavy cigarette smoke. And it's just as damaging as the stuff that floats in the air, the dust and dirt. If you have pets, we have a cat and a dog, and there's constantly pet hair, floating around. But the filters catch that. You just have to change them more often. And like you see here on the right side, that's a clean filter. That's the access to that filter. Another spring cleaning can be power washing. You get a lot of algae and molds and mildews on your gutters, on your fascias, even on your decks, and it gets kind of slimy. You get leaves laying on there, and then it rains and they get stuck on there, and You know, my deck right now could be power washed. It's not super hateful, but I have, like I said, I have a pretty good sized tulip tree, poplar, that hangs over the back of our, not the house, but in the backyard. And it always makes the white vinyl railing. About summertime, it gets to where I have to get a mold and mildew cleaner and power wash it off because it gets pretty dingy and grungy and dirty and all that stuff. So just part of maintenance. That's all this is, and that's all we're talking about. Trees. So yes, I do have a big poplar tree. I hope this never happens in my backyard, but sometimes when it gets really, really windy, you know, I kind of cringe. Is that tree ever going to fall? It would be okay if it falls a certain way, because it would miss. But if it ever gets a wind from a different direction, it could be very problematic. This picture here on the right, this is what I was talking about as far as trimming the tree limbs back off the roof. That will hold moisture. Those looks like a light gray or kind of a whitish shingle. Those will eventually turn gray or green with mold and mildew and stuff, and it will make those shingles, instead of, you know, supposedly lasting 25, 30 years, it'll probably cut them down to 20 years, and then you'll be replacing the roof. So just keep them back off the house, keep them back off the roof. And this lady here, this is just some easy trimming, shrubs, keep them off of the house. You don't want that to look like your house there on the left. That is a true picture. And I see some homes. I used to think that ivy growing up on a house was a nice look. I certainly wouldn't want this, but the more I got into insects and termites and stuff like that, having any kind of vegetation growing on your house is not a good thing to do. So real quick, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, very important part of maintenance. Spring, we always say spring forward, fall back when you change your clocks. So in the springtime, you're going to change the batteries in your smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. What I want to point out here, these are actually I have 7 smoke detectors in my house and the 2 carbon monoxide detectors right there. Those were all part of my system. They're all hardwired. So if one goes off, they all go off. And what a racket that is. There's no way you're going to sleep through a fire when those go off. That's for sure. In this right-hand side, you notice the P, the letter P on the package. And you can see it, I believe it's right in there too. The letter P stands for photoelectric. And that is, you either have a P or an I. I stands for, oh geez. I was going to say isometric. It's ionization. That's it. Oof, that was close. Ionization and photoelectric. There has been many and many a test from firemen and laboratories and stuff to where they test photoelectric and ionization to see which one picks up smoke quicker. And actually the photoelectric is quite a bit quicker. When I was home inspector, I was over in Columbus, and there was a fireman there and did a test in an aquarium type thing. And he lit a piece of foam on fire. Well, it didn't really combust. It just smoked a lot. The photoelectric went off several minutes faster than the ionization did. So it is proven. So if you go and look for those, and don't get the cheap, these packs here, they're 2 in a pack. These are smoke and carbon monoxide both. They have voices, they have blinking lights. So I paid a little extra for them, those twin packs. And you notice they're hardwired also. So, you know, a twin pack like that might cost $100, but it's not worth getting the $10 smoke detectors because they just don't, they're not as effective. More than likely they're ionization, not photoelectric. And that's not something that you want to go cheap on. So another one is just simple window cleaning. I wish we was in at the office and doing this on, in person. I'd like to see a show of hands of how many people have washed their windows in their house the last year or even the last 5 years, because I think window cleaning is a lost art. I do try to clean the windows here, especially on the doors, like on the storm doors and the sliding door out back. Um, I don't do so well on the windows, but the doors I try to do. And this is just a free promotion. I don't know anything about them. I know they're on Home Road just down from us, but I see them around a lot. If you're not into, getting on a step ladder and cleaning windows, this would be somebody that maybe you want to, call and talk to and see about getting the windows clean. What a big difference it makes in your home, though. Is, it's just a freshening feel to have your windows clean and just make the house look so much brighter. Real quick, and this is where we're going to stop at, because the next one is going to be summer um, maintenance scams. And there are so many scam artists out there, and it can be anything from banks to retirement to contractors to tree services to everything. Be very, very careful of scam artists. Hey, I can do your windows for 25 bucks, or I can trim that tree down for $500. And it always seems, if you pay $25 to do 5 windows, that's $5. That doesn't sound like a bad deal, right? Until you pay them at the door. And I'll be right back. I'm going down to the store to get some paper towels and some Windex. I'll be right back. And you never see them again, simply because you're like, no, when you get done, I'll pay you your money. I might even give you 30, but you're not getting paid until you're done. That's the way to do it. I had 3 trees cut down all the way down about 2 years ago. And the tree guy came and looked at him. He says, "Hey, how about $1,200?" I'm like, "Oh, that's too much. Oh, $1,200." And he says, "Are you paying cash?" And he says, "Yeah, I can pay you cash, but I don't have $1,200." And he said, "Well, 3 trees, how about 600?" And I said, "Well, that'll work. That's $200 a tree." And he cut them down, and I paid him. Everything was good, but tree people seem to be very notorious for not being insured, which if any of those trees fall on your house, who's gonna cover you? And then skipping out after you've paid them again up front. And they love cash, not a check, not a money order. They love cash, because then they don't have to claim it on their taxes, is one thing. But so be very, very careful about scams. If you ever, this is Neighborhood Housing Partnership, this is home buyer education. If you ever are in suspect of somebody that you think maybe is scamming you or your parents or anything, call us up, talk to Rachel, talk to me, talk to Amy, talk to anybody in the office and say, "Hey, so-and-so is here. Do you know anything about them?" Trust me, I know some contractors that I would say, no, you don't want them in your house. Tree service people, others. Rachel's going to know different people that, just by word of ear, that we know that that's not a good person to deal with, or, we're just trying to protect you. So yeah, give us a call. Any of this maintenance stuff, anything that we talked about last week with the home inspections, anything to do with lead paint, give me a call, give Rachel a call, anybody at the office, they can get a hold of us. We're here to help. I hope you learned something in the last couple of weeks. You have now graduated. Rachel will talk to you about that, and I am going to turn it over to her. It is 7:59. Thank you for paying attention, and thank you for being here, and have a good evening, and we'll see you down the road sometime. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Anybody have any questions about home maintenance?
I just have one quick question. Is gutter guard that thing that's like, it covers the gutter, but it has like holes in it for the water to run through, but not big enough for leaves to get in? Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah, it's a good idea, and it really depends. Now, there's some gutter guards, it's called gutter topper or topper gutter. And I've heard gutter guys say that it really restricts. And the hard thing about that is any kind of muck, leaves and stuff that get in there, it's very hard to reach in there and get it out because it's more permanent. It's screwed down, very little room. It's meant to, not let leaves and tree limbs or, little twigs and stuff get in there. But when stuff does get in there, you can't reach in there to get it out. And that's where the problem comes in. But any of the, the screening and stuff like that, yeah, that's good stuff. So yeah, we're well worth your money on that.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for such a great class. Good questions, solid participation for the whole month. So the next step is we have a survey for you to fill out, and I will send that with all the PowerPoints to your email in the morning. Once you get that survey filled out, we can send one by mail. We can send you the actual form, or there's a link to do it really quickly on Google. When we get that returned, then we can release your completion certificate. So that certificate, sometimes lenders will want that. Sometimes if you're getting a down payment assistance program, it will work for your education piece, and it's good for up to a year. If it gets to where you haven't bought in a year and that certificate expires, you can take the class for free again and then get that certificate renewed. And then the next steps after class, after you get the survey and your certificate, is typically students would like to schedule a one-on-one with me to go over things like credit, debt to income ratio, and what their next steps are in the home buying process. So feel free to email or give me a phone call and we'll get you scheduled for that. All right. Any last minute questions before we're done for the evening? Well, I appreciate everyone joining. It was a great class. Feel free to reach out and I will be emailing you tomorrow. Have a great night.
All right, you too, and thank you.
Thank you.